Do you want me to do that over again? That was super. That was a mess.
You were doing a good job of it until you said subtract backwards times. Like, hopefully the fan can understand time zones.
All right, let me try again.
Okay.
Welcome to Goin In Tight.
Comin Out Loose.
We did it, boys.
Welcome back, everybody, to Goin In Tight, Comin Out Loose. This is Bart Lewis, and as always, my co-host, Chris Gibson.
Hello.
On this episode, we're going to have a good time. No special topic. We're just going to talk on a variety of things from the recent race in Kentucky, the All-Star race coming up tonight, and a mid-season update along with fantasy, talking fantasy, how that works, and then finish off with a little preview of what is in store for this weekend in Texas. So, Chris, just right down the road from you, you actually went there, tried to sneak in. What'd you see? What'd you find? And what'd you think about Kentucky?
Yeah, I gave the security at Kentucky, tried to give them the good old runaround, but they had it locked down like Lockheed Martin. It was pretty impressive. But I thought it was a pretty good race overall for the weekend. We had 5 races. We labeled it incorrectly before, but we had the ARCA race, and then we had 2 Xfinity races, Thursday night racing and Friday night racing. The ARCA race, it was pretty boring up until the end. Drew Dollar wrecked out Haley Deegan, and that caused some words to be said there. It was unfortunate. He did wreck her. She came out and said that she was upset about it and that it was just a lack of experience on his part. So I thought it was an okay race. Sucks that she got knocked out because we like to root for her and see her do well. And then the weather got us for this freaking truck race again, man. It's pop-up storms were happening here in the northern Kentucky, central Kentucky area all weekend, and that chose the winner for the truck race. So that's never fun.
Yeah, so the Xfinity races were really good.
Yeah.
And Austin Cindric, I don't know why. I just assumed that he had won a lot more races than he has. He's really only won a couple of road courses. And so here I am thinking that Austin Cindric is better than he is. And he's with Team Penske. So, I mean, it comes with the territory. He probably has a bright future ahead of him. But he won both freaking races, both of them.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that was that they mentioned the fact that he's the first guy in a racing series to win on back-to-back days in the same series since Richard Petty back in the early 70s, I think it was. So
wow.
That's always cool to be able to see one of these guys that's in one of these feeder series achieve something really, really cool like that, and then get his name put in the conversation with the likes of a Richard Petty, who every NASCAR racer has respect for. So that was pretty cool. And then we got a little fight club there at the end, didn't we?
We did. So who do you think won? Noah Gragson or Harrison Burton?
I think Noah won. And the thing that I'll say about this fight is I think the last time we saw a fight that there were real punches thrown, and we'll probably get to it later, is Clint Boyer running up to Ryan Newman. But
that was an All-Star race last year.
Yeah. And so I think Noah had to have won that, because all of a sudden he just threw a nice right hook, and it looked like it connected. So it was actually a real fight. It wasn't just some of that pushing until everybody comes and tells them to get away, and then they start acting like they're really mad.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure what led up to this. I don't know that we've really dug in enough to know. I think there's been a couple of times where Harrison felt that Noah did him wrong, and he didn't like the way he was racing him. Right. And he was just, got to give respect to come over and confronting him with his displeasure with him. And so he was ready to put a little push on him. Push him a couple times, but it looked like Noah had enough there and just went to town. So
yeah, I don't know that he was ready to knuckle up. So it was a pretty good, I tried to label it the Battle of the Bluegrass. It didn't really take off, but it was fun. I think the level of competition is heightened. Nobody's getting to come out here and practice. No, they're just all coming out and racing. And as you get into these lower series, you're seeing tons of wrecks in Xfinity, tons of wrecks in trucks, and lots of wrecks in ARCA as well. And I think part of that is because there's not a lot of practice. You've got an experience when dialing in these cars. But I think it's just kids wanting to compete and wanting to make it to the next level. And there's so much that rides on the success and keeping your seat at each level of racing. So it's fun to see them compete. Obviously, I think both of them came out of it rather unscathed, but it's fun to see that there's still that heightened level of competition, even at one of those lower level feeder series.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to have a black eye or some blood. There's nothing. But we've seen some pretty pansy, some fights in NASCAR. There's been some good ones. There's been some bad ones. They're not fighters. They're race car drivers. So
right. Anything involving Joey Logano is usually a couple pushes and some very bad looks.
Hey, man.
Yeah, we had that one earlier this year, and I just can't take him serious. And if any man comes at me with a receding hairline, I'm just going to let him have the win.
So moving on to Cup, I texted Chris about stage 2, and I was trying to hold on the best I could.
Mm-hmm.
I was posted up watching the whole race, nobody around, just focused on the race, and I finally was like, I'm about to call this. This is a snooze fest. It was not exciting. And right when I said it, some stuff happened.
Yeah, I don't know what it is that you're some kind of prophet to where you speak things. You're like an anti-prophet. It's you speak things and the opposite comes into existence. So I think I said the same thing. It was really boring. I got back home from the Speedway because I couldn't get in or get a good vantage point anywhere right at the end of stage 1. And it was just absolutely boring to watch most of stage 2. But then in that last 50 to 65 laps, we got some really good racing. It looked like people were actually trying to win the race, and it comes back to the cookie cutter conundrum. Everybody's saving their car for a super long race and around a 1.5 mile track. And then at the end, after everybody's already tuned out, starts to get good.
I stand by my point. Shorten the races.
Mm-hmm.
That race did not need to be 3 hours long. My
Absolutely.
God, the remaining stage of that race was awesome. So there is hope for 1.5 mile tracks. They're not exciting. They can be exciting. Yeah. I mean, we're talking 4 wide to the finish. Blaney ramps a freaking great and runs up the track back into Harvick and Truex. And here comes Cole Custer. Cole Custer, who I also have been dogging about not really taking off as a rookie. Which, I mean, in his defense, he's a rookie. It takes a couple years. But out of nowhere to win the race. And that wasn't even the most exciting part. I mean, there was so much that came along with the racing at the end of it that was so exciting.
Yeah, it did give us some exciting racing. Overall, it was heartbreaking for me. Jimmy Johnson found another way to shoot himself in the foot. And I'll give it to him. He had made the exact same move before, and he had actually done it on a couple restarts earlier, and I saw it, and it gained him 3 or 4 spots every single time. So he had the secret sauce, but I don't know if it's his spotter. I don't know who it was, but he went down and tried to, have Keselowski planting flowers in the lawn. And then Keselowski turns him around, which Brad has said every time something like that happens. I'm turning everybody. I'm tired of it. You just know he's going to turn you around. So
you don't lift.
Yeah.
And you don't run people in the grass either.
Right. Yeah, he says he doesn't run people in the grass. I believe that as far as I can throw it.
I think practice is really playing a larger factor than we really think here. So Cole Custer won the race. So he's never
Mhm.
won a race before. He's really not done a whole lot up until the last couple of races.
Right.
We see some of the same guys we've seen up there for a while. So Truex was second, Harvick was fourth, Kurt Busch fifth. Blaney had a really great day, minus the shifter. I was worried about his hand that was going to fall off at some point.
Yeah, those
and then
vibrations in his
Yeah.
thumb had that thing going to town.
And then Amarola is still in the top 10. He didn't get a top 5, but he's still doing all right. Brad Keselowski, ninth. So who we don't typically see. So William Byron, who is just not taking off where I'd like to see him. He got 11th. Tyler Reddick, top 10. Christopher Bell, 7th. And then most impressive, and I think the whole season he's been very consistent, Matty D.
Yeah, I thought that it was definitely a race that showcased some talent that is more up and coming, and some guys that we don't typically see there. So I thought it was good. Like I said at the end, we've gotten a few people to start watching races because they've listened in, some of our buddies, and they all said the same thing. Those last 50 laps were awesome, and if every mile-and-a-half track had laps like the last 50, they'd be more popular than Daytona. Everybody'd love that. You can't always get what you want.
Yeah, and we saw a few people. I don't know if I even want to go forward here. I was going to cover Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, but no. Move on. Ask Allison.
All right, everybody. So we've got a new segment for you this week. Joining me is my wife. And 7 years ago, I never thought I would be this big of a NASCAR fan or doing a podcast here with you, Bart, much less having her join on a NASCAR podcast. My first question, have you listened to our podcast?
I've listened to it on Instagram.
So you've listened to like some of the 2 and 3 and 5 minute snippets that we've put up.
Listen, we're raising a 1-year-old and I work. So yeah, I've listened to it on Instagram.
Okay. All righty. Tell us a little bit. She's being a really good sport for joining us here today. So tell us a little bit about your opinion of NASCAR. You can tell people your opinion of me going gung-ho into NASCAR. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's driving in one consecutive left circle. I just I don't know. That's all I got.
Okay. So you don't have a high opinion of it. You don't watch.
I don't watch.
You'll
it.
watch for a minute or two when I watch with our daughter.
Yeah, and then somebody wrecks, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
this whole segment came about when Chris asked Allison about a sway bar.
Yes. I asked Allison, she does a good job with putting up with me talking about NASCAR
All the time.
and all the time. Yes. And I pitched the idea of having her come on, and part of what we're doing, and everybody knows, is we're trying to get some new fans into the sport. And so I asked her if she would let us pitch some words to her, and I used sway bar, and she said it was a button that they press in the car as somebody is coming up behind them quickly that moves their car, sways it out of the way.
Like lane departure
assist.
So that sounds like Tokyo Drift to me.
Yeah. So she thinks it's like the lane departure assist in her Highlander. So that's the knowledge that we're working with. Bart, do you want to explain the rules of what we're going to do here?
Yeah, so let's play Ask Allison. So what we're going to do here is we're going to ask Allison 6 key words or phrases that are NASCAR lingo, and she's going to explain to us what they are. Chris will say, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not. And she's also going to provide as much detail as possible here, and then I will explain what it truly is if need be. So Chris, kick us off here.
Yeah, so the first word we have here for you, we'll give you a little bit of a hint here. This is a part of the car. What is the splitter?
Immediately I think of the seat. Like if you were hit I don't know why I think the seat's going to split down the middle. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's the seat splitting in the middle when you're hit.
So you think if somebody's hit by the car, that what they sit on needs to split in half?
I don't think it needs to, but yep.
Okay.
That's what I thought initially.
That's very, very wrong. And I think it would be very unsafe to have the thing holding the person in the
You're right.
car split
You're
in
right.
half. But
ejecting.
an
Right.
eject button. So Bart, tell us what the splitter is.
The splitter is essentially the front bumper of the car. It's indented a little bit, and it provides downforce for the car. So just like the rear wing, it sticks to the back end of the car. The front splitter is holding the car down to the front side of the car down to the racetrack.
Yeah. So our second phrase here is the lucky dog.
That's a phrase that people say, like.
Well, it's a part. It's also called the wave around. So it's the lucky dog, or it's also called the wave around. It's something that happens during the race.
Is it like the underdog is taking the lap and I don't know, coming out ahead?
Yeah.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, the underdog part, definitely the getting ahead. Catching up is more of what I would say, right, Bart?
Yeah, the lucky dog is the slang term for it, but they call it the wave around, and that's when the last car one lap down will get the wave around during caution, so they're at the tail end of the lead lap. So it's kind of like you're the last car on one lap down. We're gonna give you the courtesy of being back on the lead lap, so you have a chance to work your way back up.
Yep. Cool. So the third term we have for you is called the track bar.
It's making
See,
me
I
thirsty.
know this isn't right, but like immediately I'm thinking of like when track and field, they're coming off the little like foot pedals and they're like ready to race. So it just makes me think of the beginning of a race, but I don't know that cars would be set into a track. So
I get what you're thinking. So like you're thinking of like starting blocks.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We're going to
that
go with that for tires, like the little blocks.
So the track bar, that would heavily impede the cars behind that starting car if there was something in the middle of the road. Usually when there's things in the middle of the track, it brings out a caution flag. So that was a solid stab at it. I see where you made the connection, but Bart, tell us what the track bar is.
Well, I was honestly hoping you would go with something like alcohol related. Like it's I don't know, that's where I go.
Yeah, the track bar.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Emphasis was not on the latter.
Yeah, it should have been track bar.
That track bar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the track bar is essentially a bar on the back end of the car, and you can raise and lower it to make the car more loose or less tight. So you see them put a wrench into the back window and make a track bar adjustment. I believe that drivers can actually move it as well, but it doesn't always work. So,
Right. Well, this one might induce a more of an alcoholic answer. This phrase is called happy hours. If people have listened to the podcast, we have talked about the use of happy hours prior to NASCAR events and cup races. So what do you think a happy hour is?
Wait, is this like what happens during a race?
No, this is prior to a cup race. So prior to a race, the drivers partake in happy hours. What do you think the happy hour is?
They gotta be just like exchanging some decent fuel for the cars. Like I just keep thinking of topping the cars off with like crazy chemicals. I don't know. Like, you've got your premium windshield wiper fluid and then you got just the dirty stuff.
And they do this for an hour, or they have an hour to do it?
Oh, it's an hour? I don't know.
It's a happy hour. So I think
of the guy who's like
wrong.
Bush Light all over the place, but it makes me think that it's not actually alcohol because they're driving right after that. So duh, they can't drink.
So if I told you it happened the day before the race, these happy hours, or 2 days prior to a race, these happy hours happen, what would you say then?
That they're drinking.
Clint Boyer, maybe.
It's a mixer.
Right.
It's a mixer. Yeah. No, that is the practice rounds. So that's what they call
asked you
their
that
practice.
the other day if they practiced, and you told me no.
Well, they're not practicing because that at least it shows that you're listening to me. They do practice normally, but because of COVID-19, they're limiting the amount of on-track time. So they don't do the practicing and the qualifying, which many times I would watch and you would get confused and go, oh my gosh, are they racing again today?
You're setting me up for failure.
Yeah. So happy hour was way wrong.
Loved it.
I don't actually think that that's what they're doing, but initially when you hear it, it's like,
topping off on gas and chemicals in the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. All right. What do you think dirty air is?
when the exhaust is blowing nasty stuff in the air. Or when you're racing. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that answer. I'm going to stick with that answer.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad for the environment.
Yes. Yes.
Would it be bad in general? I think it's just bad.
Yes, it is.
Sounds bad. Sure. So the cars are essentially all making this hole in the air as they go by. The lead car is basically punching a hole into that air, and there can be turbulence whenever you're behind a car that can kind of mess your car up, and that's called dirty air. You want to be in the clean air out front and not in the dirty air. I think the dirty air is when the seat, you poot in the seat and it splits in half.
Yeah. And because you got too low as you were in the track bar.
And if all else fails, just top it off.
Just top it off at happy hour. Top it off with the.
You guys got some chemicals? We should just top this thing off for an hour.
I need some of the good windshield wiper fluid, not the dirty windshield wiper fluid.
You watch cars too many times. Is that, what is it, All-in-All?
All in all.
All in all. Yeah.
Cars.
Yeah.
All right. The last one here, and then we'll let you back to your evening, is bump drafting.
That has to be like some aerodynamic stuff happening. Like when I'm thinking of Ricky Bobby, like shake and bake, when they're flying up next to each other and they're giving each other a little boost with the way that the wind blows off the car and it like slings. It either is going to help someone go around or it's going to prevent them from getting around. You
were close. That was a pretty good correlation to the movie and understanding what drafting is. But Bart, explain the bump.
Sure.
The bump would push them forward, right?
I mean, it is as simple as that.
Yes.
If a car behind a car bumps a car for a temporary amount of time, that car is going to have an increased speed.
So you kind of figured that one out yourself.
Yeah.
That was good. From seats splitting in half to the lucky underdogs and, dirty windshield wiper fluid. You did an okay job. We'll give you 2 out of 6 is what we'll say. We'll give you 2 out of 6.
That was harsh.
Ask Allison.
All right. Well, everybody. We've got the season of Underglow upon us. It began last year when Kurt Busch rode that Monster Energy car onto Broadway in Nashville and did some burnouts. We're talking about All-Star Weekend. We've got a lot in store for us. Bart, why don't you tell us a little bit about the races and some stuff leading up to the All-Star event and the history of it before we dive into what people can see here?
Sure. So this race is just primarily for fun. There is $1 million on the line, so it's not for naught. This is typically held in Charlotte, so this is very different for it to be held in July and at Bristol. So definitely something new and different. Fans like that. I like that. Chris likes that. So we're excited to see what this may bring. It typically does bring some excitement. Like I was talking earlier, Clint Boyer karate chopped Ryan Newman in the face after the race.
5 or 6 times as he was sitting in his car.
Yeah, locked into his car, no chance to defend himself. But there's been so many awesome All-Star races in the past. The race that I have on behind me is the 1987 All-Star race where Dale Earnhardt passed in the grass. You may have heard that term before. He passed in the grass and won the $200,000 associated with the winnings from that race.
Gone up a little bit.
Gone up a little bit since
Slightly.
1987. Yeah, so a lot of big names will be in this. You've had a one-run race in the past, 2019, 20. You won the All-Star race in the past. You could have won a Cup championship.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all ways that you can get into this. There's also an All-Star Open that will happen prior to the All-Star race, and the winners of each of the 3 stages of that race also enter into the All-Star race as well. And then there's one outlier, and that is the fan vote. So the fans can vote anybody in that they see fit. I believe the last we heard, they haven't announced that yet, but I believe Bubba Wallace is in the lead for that spot. This is also a time for NASCAR to kind of pull some stuff out of their sleeve or their hat or whatever they have and try something new. So I know that they're, along with the underglow that Chris is talking about, which should be a treat to see that many cars have that. But they're also trying a new scheme. So you'll see the number will be placed slightly different on the car. It's going to be a little bit smaller. The number will be a little bit smaller and up more towards or back
towards the tail. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the sponsor will have a larger spot on the side of the car. A lot of people have really expressed their displeasure for this. My gosh, really? Like, who cares? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And I think, everybody is so used to, from when you're a kid and you're a NASCAR fan and you get your first, RC electric car that you can drive around the driveway, go out there and paint a big 3 on the side of it or an 88 on the side of it or whatever it may be. I do like what they've done in only moving it slightly back and making it smaller so that the number is still on the side. I don't know how I feel about the complete removal of the number on the side. I'm not upset about the what they have now, but I don't know that I want them to completely remove the number on the side. I don't know why. Am I a traditionalist now? My mind could change. You changed my mind on 5 lug nuts versus 1. So I'm now fine with 1 lug nut. I may be fine with not having the number on the side of the car. Who knows?
Well, I think they may be warming us up to it. And I'm somebody who's always open to change. I like change. Change is typically good, keeps it fresh and exciting. The whole purpose of this is not to say, hey, you know what? It's time to refocus where we put the number on the car. That's not what they're trying to do here.
Right.
The whole deal is that they're talking to sponsors and they're talking to teams, and they want it to make this more of a return for these sponsors that are sponsoring millions of
100%.
dollars for these cars. And so it's great to have the visibility that these sponsors do when drivers are walking around, going to appearances. We were just talking about this today. I don't think I'd be wearing Napa Auto Parts apparel if my driver wasn't sponsored by them.
Yep.
So that's advertisement that Napa is getting essentially for free. I actually purchased those shirts and those hats. So there's a variety of ways that the teams are making money. One of those ways is sponsors. You can see the sponsor more clearly when it's on the side of the car. If it's on the hood of the car, that's great. On the side of the car, the way it is now, you just don't really see it. So I think this is a chance to say, hey, this is for the sponsors. We want to help the teams out and give them more incentive to do this.
Right.
And I honestly, seeing the schemes coming out, I think they look sharp.
Yeah, I think they do too. I really do like what they're doing. I don't know. It's got to be something traditional or something like I don't like breaking from the familiarity of what I've got every Sunday. But I do think one thing that we touch on, it seems like almost every time we talk, is money drives motorsports, whether it be F1, whether it be NASCAR, whether it be Xfinity. Even when you get down into these lower series, you've got Kyle Busch's son running little go-karts now. I can tell you who's got the fastest go-kart out there. It's the guy who's worth a few $1 million. His son's going to win. Yep. So it's money drives all these things. And I don't want to see the sport take any steps back because there's not funding there. So whatever's going to work will adapt to it, and I think people will adapt to it. Everybody thought, going to making the cars look different. They don't look anything like the car you drive down the road anymore. Everybody thought that was going to be the end of the world. And, there's still 3 million plus people tuning in. So I think it'll be fine.
And they really haven't since the 90s. So I don't know what people are even harping on anymore. I mean, when you change the body style to have like the car of tomorrow and they have that wing on the back and it just sucked, like that's something to get pissed off about. That is something that kind of took the sport down a notch because it really sucked terribly. But when you're changing the scheme of the car, I don't really, and for the good of the sport, I really have no issue with it. They're testing that, right? So it's not a points race. It's a great time to test different things. Another thing that has come up is the choose cone.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with the choose cone or the decision cone or whatever they call it, this is very common in short track local racing. It's essentially you line up single file on a caution, and typically in a NASCAR race, the leader would get to choose inside or outside, and everyone else lines up 2 by 2 according to that, going all the way back to the last car. And the choose cone is a little different. So you're lining up single file and you get to choose which side you want to be on, the inside or the outside. So before you get to that cone, you can't do it after you get the cone or in the middle of the cone, or you will go back. You will literally be set to the end of the field and start on the last car in the lead lap. So it's interesting because you may see 4 or 5 cars take the inside because they like that groove better and they feel like they can pass more. And so you'll see 6 essentially start second. So it's kind of exciting to see where people end up. What do you think about this, Chris?
Yeah. So I think, damn, we missed an opportunity to ask Allison what the choose cone was. Because,
Is that like the Harry Potter hat?
Either Yes, it's either the Harry Potter hat, or I can tell you right now, if we asked her what it was, she'd think it is a traffic cone in the middle of the racetrack. But I saw a picture of it today. It's just a big orange wedge in the middle of the track. I like it. I think it's going to add a different level and a different strategy, because one of the things that has always annoyed me is when you get somebody like what happened with Jimmy at Kentucky, is he's lining up and you've got other guys with their teammates behind them, and it's just by happenstance they have their teammates, and he not only doesn't have a teammate, but he's got a guy in a different manufacturer behind him, so he's got no help. I think you're going to see a lot of the strategy with the manufacturers and the teams play out in it. And I think Bristol's a really cool place to test it, because that outside lane is traditionally where everybody finds their stick on those restarts. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of strategy you see, whether it be from some teammates who get to run in it, or some manufacturers seeing if they can get an edge by choosing that lower lane. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too. And I think there's definitely a preference that comes along with Bristol. Not everybody likes the inside. Not everyone likes the outside, running against the wall. Both of them can perform well. So it's not like somebody's getting screwed over because they have to get on the upside or the low side. So I think it's really exciting to see. This is something that could – you're adding more complexity into the sport a little bit for people that aren't familiar with it.
Right.
But also for people who are familiar with the sport and the roots of the sport, it's really exciting to see the top tier of motorsports implement something that's so familiar, not so much in top tier racing.
I think it's an awesome time to try out new stuff. The choose cone thing is something that drivers have talked about. It's something that fans have talked about. It's something that has just had this constant rumble now for a couple years, and they're finally going to do it. And I think every now and again, we said last week, we don't want to be constantly changing the rules so that it's hard to follow if you're not an avid watcher. But I do think there are things that can enhance the level of competition, like the playoffs, which we'll talk about later, in the point system. and like this choose cone rule. It just adds some different complexity that isn't something that you'd see so often and monotonous in the 2-line restart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't hit them for trying. What everybody wants is them to be heard, and every fan wants to say NASCAR is not doing the right thing. They're not listening, but this is truly listening to the fans, listening to the drivers.
For sure.
Austin Dillon was the biggest proponent for this. I remember him speaking up. Some drivers don't like this. I believe it was Chase Elliott who was not excited about it. That I remember that. But tons of fans have spoken out and said this would be really cool to see. So yeah, so super exciting. All-Star race is tonight, starting with the Open at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
We don't care about Mountain or Pacific over here. and then the All-Star race itself will be at 8:30 Eastern. So
yep, looking forward to it.
Subtract backwards time zone. All right, everybody, we're midway through the season now, so I think it's time to take a look at where our drivers stand when it comes to the playoffs and where we think they'll shake out when it comes to that time. So I think before we do that, Chris is going to kick us off with how rankings and the point system work in NASCAR. I know so many people have been listening and are just generally curious about how the point system works for NASCAR.
Yeah, so you've heard us talk about the different way that NASCAR has chosen to do the points. It changed a few years back. So it's very, very easy. There are 40 cars, as we have talked about in most races. The first place driver gets 40 points for finishing the race. Plain and simple. Second place gets 35, and then moving down from second place, it moves all the way down in points. So 35 to second place, 34 to third place, and so on. And once you get down to 36 through 40th, everybody who comes in 36 through 40th, they only get 1 point. So the other way that you can earn points is by winning a stage. So if you come in first in a stage, you get 10 points, and then that goes backwards on down to 10th place. So first place is 10 points, and then if you come in 10th place in a stage, you get 1 point. Additionally, if you come in first place in stage 1 or stage 2, you get an additional playoff point. And we will touch on how those roll over into the playoffs in just a minute. But if you come in first in the third and final stage, which concludes the race, you also get an additional 5 playoff points. And then if you win the regular season championship, so as we get to the end of the season and the last races come around before the playoffs, if you are in first at the end of the regular season, you will get an additional 15 playoff points. If you are in second at the end of the regular season, you will get an additional 10 points. Third gets 9, fourth gets 8, and so on. A win in the Cup Series gives you an automatic playoff berth. So say you have won 2 races during the season and you get 10 points, and you've won 5 stages, so you get 5 points, and then you also win the regular season title, so you have 15 points. That's 30 total playoff points. So when everybody resets to 2,000 points, you would actually start the playoffs with 2,030 points, giving you a little bit of a leg up over the competition. And so what it does is it creates a little bit more competition amongst those playoff 16, which I will let Bart talk about how the playoffs work and what we get to see there.
So Chris was saying he's basically talking right now February through the end of August. That's the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens after that? They're fighting all year long to get a win, get stage points, get points in general, so they can be in the top 16 drivers to lock into the playoffs. If you're not in those top 16, you're not in the playoffs. So all the rest of those drivers, you're basically just out there floundering around for the remaining races, which is unfortunate. All in all, with about the 37, 40 drivers you have contending, there's about 20, 25 true contenders that could make it into the top 16. It really comes down to the wire, so it's really exciting to watch, especially when it gets down to the last few races. The schedule keeps changing this year. So I'm not sure if this will actually be the case. I believe it is now. They've set August, but Daytona, the Speedway would actually be the last regular season race on August 29th.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been changed. That was not the last race previously. That's more of a race that a lot of people don't have their finger under. There's not a lot of control. You could easily get in a wreck. So that someone's season can be over very easily if you're on the bubble. So once you get into the 16 drivers, there's 3 races that decide the next round of drivers. So in this case, we're going to, the first round will be Darlington, Richmond, Bristol, and then they cut 4 drivers. It'd be down to 12. Once that happens, you'll have Las Vegas, Talladega, and Charlotte, and you'll be down to 8 drivers. So 8 drivers remaining at that point. And then finally, you'd have Kansas, Texas, and Martinsville, and that would cut additional 4 drivers. So it'd be down to 4. The last race this year in Phoenix, those 4 drivers will essentially compete for the championship. So whoever has the most points, whoever succeeds the best during that race wins the overall championship of the Cup Series. So what you do in early season does matter. What you do in the mid-season does matter. What you do in the playoffs in those 3 consecutive races really does matter. You've shown that you can race a variety of tracks and still remain consistent. So I do like the way it is now versus the old way where it's just a bunch of points adding up all year long, and whoever had the most points at the end wins. Which, I mean, that works, but stages are cool. You're racing for a finish. You're racing for those extra bonus points every time it resets during the playoffs. So I really think it's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's really already time to start talking about the playoffs as we're 10 races from that. So I can start off and talk a little bit about who's on the bubble right now. So of these top 16 drivers, who's just on the outside of that? And Chris can talk about who's more safe on the inside of that. So we saw somebody who was outside of that jump up to, I believe, he is now 9th. So Cole Custer, with that win, he locked himself in. So somebody who had no chance in my mind prior to Kentucky's race is now locked into the playoffs. So that takes a spot out. So if you win a race, I mean, you're taking over a spot, and that's leaving fewer and fewer spots for somebody who hasn't won a race. So you want to make sure that you're either winning a race or you're getting a lot of points. So right now, top 25 down, you got John Hunter Nemechek, Michael McDowell, Christopher Bell, Ricky Stenhouse, Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace, Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick, and Austin Dillon. So those are the people that are on the outside of the bubble here. Either they're going to pick up some good races here in the next few, or they're going to stay on the outside of that threshold. When you get down into the next few, so Jimmy Johnson just right outside, just right on the 16 mark, and that was because he missed a race due to COVID, so that really hindered him. Also, he spun the last race, if you missed that.
Yes.
So then you got William Byron, Clint Boyd, Matt Benedetto. Kyle Busch is 12th, somebody who won the Cup race last year. And then Kurt Busch, 11th. So all of those drivers are in danger of, if they keep having bad races, losing the top 16. So I don't anticipate a whole lot of movement for anybody outside the top 25 coming up to the bubble there. But there'll be a little shakeup. I'm hoping some of these drivers underperforming right now who typically perform well will start doing a little bit better. So Chris, walk us through the top 10. What are we looking at right now?
Yeah, so for the top 10 right now, we've got Harvick in the number 4 up top, and then we've got Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Ryan Truex, Alex Bowman, Cole Custer in 9th. He jumped up quite a bit, as you said, after his win at Kentucky. And then we've got Eric Almirola in 10th after he has had a very strong showing this year. So, there's lots of guys who have at least one win, who have locked in their playoff spot. And then once you get to Almirola in that 10 spot, there could be a lot of movement as we go on throughout the year, because while he is in the 10 spot, which you might think is secure, he doesn't have a win. And if people start popping off wins, I mean, key guys that haven't gotten wins are Kyle Busch. He's normally somebody who might have 1 or 2 wins by this point and doesn't have one. So as people keep winning, people are going to get pushed out. So Bart, who do you have? We talked last week that we would tell people who we are predicting as our mid-season, who will be the top 4 drivers that we will be seeing in the championship for. So who do you have for that?
So it's a tough one to guess at this point. I mean, we're in July, but based on what I've saw so far, I can make a somewhat educated decision. Obviously, I think Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin will be in the Final 4. They have dominated the season all year long with consistency and wins. I also like Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney has really shown consistency and has been up in the top 10 pretty much the whole season. So I anticipate that he will have a really strong rest of the year and make it up in the top 4. And then with no surprise, I will say Chase Elliott as well. The man has some terrible luck, but he also is dedicated and finds wins when he needs those wins. So he fell short last year. I think this year he's going to get in the top 4.
Yeah, and mine is almost the same, but I didn't give Blaney the go-ahead just yet. So I actually ranked mine, and this is probably a bad move on my part.
That was 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll go with that.
Okay. So mine is Denny first. I think he's just primed for more wins. He seems like he has a great cars team, has it figured out. Then Harvick, and then I've got Joey coming in at 3rd. He seems like he's been knocking on the door a couple times, and he's been edged out a little bit. For somebody with as big a mouth, he seems to be timid when he gets in some spots with his teammates. But so Denny, Harvick, Joey, and then I have Chase in 4th as well.
Nice.
I think he's been hard on his luck, and I think it's just a matter of time before he gets his little kick in the pants. It seems like he always goes through like a 4, 5, 6 race stint where it's like mediocre, and mediocrity for him is like coming in the bottom end of the top 10 or right below that. So he's not performing as well, but I definitely think he's got at least another win in there this year that'll help push up his points and those playoff points.
Yeah, I think he was like 23rd at Kentucky, so that's not good. But
no, not at all.
And then Joey, I want to say I like that pick, but man, he's one of the guys just like Kyle Busch who really is no practice is just affecting him. So if we keep up with his no qualifying, no practice, I could potentially see Joey and Kyle really having a terrible year this year. But
yeah. I'm enjoying seeing Kyle not have a good year. But I think I do agree. It seems like there is a group of drivers who are not able to capitalize without that practice. Mm-hmm. And I think as we go down the road, and we'll talk about, our playoff projections and who we think is going to make it in and who's not. But I think that's going to play a huge role is if we still don't have practice, if a guy like Kyle Busch, when we look at it again in 4 weeks, still doesn't have a win, it's clearly he hadn't been able to cheat the car to where he needs to get it. So I think that's going to play a huge role. But, it's a huge look ahead at something. We still have tons of racing left to do, but it's always fun not only to talk about silly season, but to start making playoff projections as we get here. So
never too early.
Never too early. All right, everybody. So you've heard us talk about our involvement in fantasy. A few of you have decided to jump into the Goin In Tight, Comin Out Loose Fantasy League and try your hand at things, which is always cool. For those of you who haven't and are looking to get into it, Bart is just going to give us a quick update of how it works, and then we'll let you all know how things are going for our fantasy seasons as well.
So you're looking at having 5 drivers. So you get to pick 5 drivers to be on your lineup, and you get 1 in the garage. So the 5 drivers that you pick, you can only use a driver 10 times. So every time you use one of these drivers in your lineups, a tick goes down. With so many races in the season, you can easily exhaust somebody who's good, like Denny and Kevin right now, very quickly. So you want to make sure to use drivers that have consistency or are good at a certain track. The garage driver is for safety reasons. So say that your driver in your lineup gets taken out in a crash, or they have engine trouble or a flat, something like that. You can move them up to your main lineup and move that person down, or that person who's underperforming down.
Yeah. So you can take that driver, that garage driver, and move him up all the way up until the end of stage 2.
Right.
And then the points work exactly like they do in the actual NASCAR race. So if your driver's coming in first, you get 40 points for him. If he is scoring stage points as well, you'll see some drivers that are doing really well. You'll see a driver like, say, Joey's been up front all day. He's got a stage win, and he finishes the race up front. He's going to have, he can have 55 points.
Yeah, so that's how the points work. And then also there are a few opportunities for bonus points. So you get to choose who wins the poll. We haven't had this since like March. So you either get 5, COVID ruins everything, but you either get 5 or 10 bonus points for that if you guess who wins the poll correctly.
Yep.
Then you also get a chance to guess on who gets stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3, and the manufacturer, 10 points each for those. So that can really help your day out if you're having a few team members on your team that aren't doing well. You can really make that up if you guess those stage winners and the manufacturer of the race who wins the race correctly. So we've been playing all year. We've been playing for a couple of years now. Having a lot of fun with it. I would recommend it. It's like football. If anybody plays fantasy football, it makes you way more interested in the games. You would typically not be watching Atlanta Falcons play the Buccaneers, but you want to because you got like 3 players going on. So you want to make sure that those players succeed. It's fun to watch because you got something riding on it. Same with NASCAR. You got something riding on it. You've picked who you think's going to win. It's exciting to see them win or lose, especially if you join a league. It's even more fun. So how are we doing overall, Chris? How are we performing?
Well, there's one of us that is doing better than the other. So in our current fantasy league, there are 7 of us that we have playing for an undisclosed amount of money. So Bart is currently in first in our league, and I am currently 6th out of all 7 of us playing for the money. And in our league, there are quite a few people who have much more NASCAR knowledge than us, and some who are a little bit less, like our buddy Greg, and whose NASCAR name is WTF Am I Doing? So you can be anybody and join this. And yeah, rocking a solid 3rd place. So nationally, I am ranked 36,215th. I would like to note that since we started this podcast, I think maybe episode 1 or 2, we were talking about it. I was ranked very, very low. I was in like the 57,000s. So I've been making moves. Bart is ranked 1,554th. So he is knocking on the top 1,500 in the country of NASCAR Fantasy with 3,199 points. So if you want to join our fantasy league, feel free. You can't win any of our money because you're too late. And it's Goin In Tight, Comin Out Loose is our fantasy league. So start up a team and join in with us if you want to. Fantasy is super fun, like Bart said, and like I was talking about with the points not only make you root harder for your driver, but the playing fantasy makes you root hard for about 5 or 6 drivers, depending on who you pick for those spots and in the bonus round.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening today. Keep in mind that the schedule is out for the end of August. So we got Texas this upcoming weekend, Kansas, New Hampshire. Moving into August, we got doubleheader at Michigan.
Wah, wah.
We got the Daytona Road Course.
Yep.
Which is a little bit sad, a little bit exciting, because the road course we've seen with the 24-hour Rolex race, but that's Watkins Glen, and I love Watkins Glen.
Yeah.
So that's sad to see. Then we have another doubleheader at Dover. Should be some exciting races to come through the end of the regular season.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun finish out to the season, especially with, like you said earlier, finishing out with Daytona. So we look forward to talking to you all next week. As always, we thank you for tuning in to Goin In Tight, Comin Out Loose. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter at goininttight_pod. You can also find us now. We finally got approved on Apple, folks. So you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Yes, Google. You can find us on Spotify, and you can find us on Apple, as well as our host Anchor. And then you can also visit us at goininttightpodcast.com, and you can find all of our episodes and some of the articles we post there as well. We look forward to talking to you all next week, and thank you for joining us.